Of course, I couldn't wait to talk to longtime Democratic strategist James Carville about this crazy political situation. James, have you ever seen anything quite like this in your long career?
No, ma'am. Never seen it, never read about it. Wouldn't believe it if I did. It's extraordinary. I mean, just everything from the debate to the shooting to the events of Sunday. Just really, really some. I don't know if sometimes I feel fortunate just I'm still living and watching all of this kind of history in a compressed time. Um, it's Lennon said once that history goes decades with nothing happening, and it goes days with decades happening. I'm dizzy. I don't know which decade. I mean, I've been through so many of them.
It does feel that way, that so much has gone on, even in the last 2 weeks. It's kind of reached a fevered pitch. And I know that you wrote an op-ed, James, in the New York Times earlier this month, predicting that Joe Biden would leave the race. But I'm not sure people realize you have been one of the few sounding the alarm about the Biden age issue for over a year. How are you so prescient about this?
Well, Katie, I think I had well, actually three things. All right. I am going to be 80 this year. So I'm kind of familiar. I'm still, in you're thinking, cogent, but I can feel the effects. And unlike most people, I had some distant idea what the job was like. And it's just in everybody, all of my friends, when they do focus groups, when they say Joe Biden, people would just bury their hands in their faces and go, "Oh my God, he's old." And the other thing I had, but most people don't, I had a platform, and I hated myself for doing it. I wrestled with it, but I thought it was the right thing to do, and it was very unpleasant, but I just knew that this is I couldn't remotely do anything like that right now, and I don't think he's exempt from the physics of age more than anybody else is.
When you spoke out, James, did you get much backlash from the White House or from other Democratic operatives?
Um, you know, it's not as much as you might think. Yes, it was a lot of, "What are you doing, man? You're really hurting the party brand. This is Trump. We have to be united." And I understood all that. I understood that was going to be a reaction going into it. I mean, didn't see anything that surprised me. We had that Matt Tynock captured that thing with Rob Ronna and I on tape, sort of making the argument. And I understood, and people were somewhat miffed at me. And then people would say, "Look, somebody wants to call you and talk." I said, "I'm happy to talk to anybody, but no one's going to talk me out of this." Okay. I mean, I'm not going to be rude to anybody. I certainly be nice to them. But I thought about that. Okay. I mean, I thought about it for a long time. And I mean, I've been around. I knew what the effect of me saying things would be, but I just didn't feel like I had any other choice.
I'm curious why you think it took so long, James, for the public spectacle of the presidential debate to get your fellow Democrats to understand the gravity of the problem.
A lot of it has to do with people like President Biden. Okay, the people in the party, the people that know him, they like him. And oh, Joe wants to do this. And I can say this because I'm Irish. I think man, we're some hard-headed people. I mean, if when somebody gets the Irish off, it's hard to kind of move them. But a combination of that, and like I say, people just really like him. All the people around him are all old friends of mine. I liked them. I knew them, and I used to hate people like myself. I used to, what is it? Popping off on TV, and we're sitting here, working away every day trying to get something done, and I got to listen to this jerk. And I mean, I'd become what I used to hate, and it was kind of difficult. But I think what took so long is a combination of people really liked him and really didn't want to go to him with bad news, and he had a good streak of stubbornness. And by the way, he has some reasonable grievances about how he's been underestimated all of his life, and there's some truth to that. But it didn't matter; he was still too old.
Speaking of the people around him, you're hearing rumblings of what did they know and when did they know it, suggesting perhaps there was some kind of cover up or a lack of transparency. How damaging do you think this will be for the Democratic Party and for Kamala Harris's candidacy?
So this is one thing I do know, and of course I wasn't there for every meeting, but prominent people would say, I went to the White House and I met with President Biden. He seemed fine to me. It really did. And I mean, I'll get them to authorize names, but they're all people that you would have heard of. And I don't know how this manifests itself. I mean, well, if you're sitting there and he loses his train of thought, 3 times in a meeting, how serious is that? You had the White House doctor examine him. When does it become my role? And was that, how there's 1,000 answers to it. And I think the most likely one is, and people would assure me, it was part of it was to say, don't worry, he's still cogent, which didn't soothe my worries at all. Uh, so I don't know, but she's going to have to answer it. There is no doubt about that. And Republicans telegraphed that punch. I saw this punch coming. I texted him actually with Maggie Haberman, saying this thing is coming 100%. You could see it. You knew they were coming with it.
How do you think she should respond to that, James?
Well, I don't know totally what the facts are, but I was in meeting with plenty of people, and I thought the president was, aware what was going on. I saw as many other people who did, and I'm sure that they're going to get a list of people, kind of historians, economists, the kind of people that go in and out of the White House, and said, "Well, I saw him, and he seemed fine to me." I was looking for. There's all kinds of things that you can do. There's a lot of tools in the answer box, and it's coming. So just sharpen your tools and clean them up because you're going to need them.
I think it shows how delicate and sensitive a subject this is about somebody you love or work with or care about getting older, whether it's having to take the car keys away from an elderly parent or talking to the president of the United States and kind of just being honest, or it's so difficult to handle these things, isn't it?
Is it difficult? And, my children talk to me about it all the time. My mother was 5 years. I mean, that's why I knew this politically, there was no way they could deal with this. I knew this from the beginning because everybody has experience with old age. It's just something you can't mitigate with people because when the debate, the first 7 texts I got on the debate is, "Oh God, that was Daddy 8 years ago." I mean, it was something to that effect. Because everybody saw something that they went through with this, and I knew that you just can't tell people. You can go out, you can get a good State of the Union, or you can kind of run a little fast up the steps of Air Force One. But everybody has experience with this.
Let me ask you what everyone's been asking me since Kamala Harris was endorsed by President Biden and then, of course, by many, many other Democrats. 4 simple words. Can she do it?
Yes. First of all, we weren't that far away. One of the things I read, I'll just take a second, John. I read this. I actually read some guy, Tyler Cowen. He's some right-wing guy, writes on some all of why the Democratic Party is falling apart. And there's this, the Democratic Party is not falling apart. The Democratic Party has not lost an election in the last 2 years anywhere in the country. The Democratic Party is leading in every Senate poll in every state they're running in. What they did have is they had a President Biden age problem. Now that problem has been removed. And I expect us to be very competitive. I don't predict who's going to win, but I think the prospects of the party are significantly better today than they were 4 days ago.
If you were running Kamala Harris's campaign or advising her, James, what would your strategy for her be?
Well, the first thing I'd figure out where I was. And where she is people really don't know her. You think you know her, but you really don't. She's vice president. I mean, there's this kind of Fox caricature of what she is. And so I would, be forceful, be early on sort of definition. I might come up with a couple of proposals just to show the kinds of things that I'm thinking about. I would, she's gotten a lot better. Now, this is something people internally would tell me. Is she's become more confident in meetings. Her staff work is a lot better. I've been around her personally, but I know people have, and that's a pretty universal feeling. Well, I might have to put her on a track. I mean, she may have to, do a Sarah Palin. I hope it help end up a little better than that. But there's a race for definition going on, and they're so sloppy right now that they're saying she's going to take away your plastic straws. Oh man, every time I think I'm going to right to a plastic straw, I mean, that's how hard they've been hit.
The Republicans are scrambling.
Are down to like they're complaining that she I don't know if she ever wanted to ban plastic straws or not. I really don't care. The paper straw is fine with me, to tell you the truth. But I mean, that's again. I'm going to do a lot of humor on that in the coming days. The great straw. Is this the last straw? Or will this be the straw that broke the camel's back? What were they thinking?
The straw that broke the Kamala's back.
Yeah. Look at
that. But so you're saying that she needs to define herself, James. What else? How does she do that? And what should she be emphasizing? Clearly, she's been talking about the overturning of Roe v. Wade, and she's been really focused on that. Should she continue doing that?
Yeah, but there's something else. Her background is a prosecutor and attorney general. And weirdly enough, because of politics of 2020, or what they thought was the politics of 2020, you couldn't talk about being a prosecutor. Of course you could. It was just erroneous. And the crime rate is down significantly in the Biden-Harris administration from the Trump administration. That's a fact. And I would say, as Attorney General, I know what's going on, and I think these companies are engaged in price fixing and price gouging. And but I'm going to ask the Attorney General to have a special task force. I'm going to personally supervise that, because that's what people think. Don't figure out. They don't think Biden caused inflation. He was too old to cause inflation. How could he cause inflation? What's happening is all these companies, insurance companies, drug companies, airlines, they all get together and they're fixing these prices, and he can't do anything to stop them. The public thinks this is an abuse of corporate price fixing power. I kind of think it might be right. I mean, I can't tell you that's all of it, but I think they're very aware of pricing. So I think that would be a good opening, like find out more about her. And the big thing is going to be on the fourth night of the convention. I don't know who she's going to pick as vice president, but she can pick somebody who's going to be a younger person. I'm guessing it's going to be a male. Going to have a wife and 2 kids, and it's going to be Harris and Doug and the red and white, and it's going to scream generational change. This is not the same deal. Okay. That's entirely different. Remember in 1992, when first picture in the Arkansas back lawn of the Clintons and the Gores together, that kind of we were going to win that. Okay. Because that just like you were so used to having World War II, veterans and kind of the president and, the adoration look of Nancy Reagan or something. And then you saw these four people in their 40s, and you weren't going to stop people from making a change. So much of politics is visual. And she's an impressive looking woman. Trump will not debate her. All right.
You think he's going to pull out of the debate?
Already has.
Well, he hasn't yet. He said he wanted it to be on Fox, not
Well,
ABC.
whatever. Okay, he don't want to do it. Then the next demand is, well, I'm gonna have to have this. It's the easiest thing to do in politics is pull out of a debate, and he already agreed to this. And
Won't that hurt him for someone who's building a whole campaign around strength to shy away from debating Kamala Harris?
I think you can make it. I had Andrew Jarecki, who's the filmmaker, and I said, Andrew, you should get to him I guess it's a statement that he's pulling out the debate, then overlay they always want that stuff of her giggling, and just overlay the sound of her giggling. He won't even show up to debate. Yeah, he's such a coward. What a big mouth. I think that'll drive him nuts. Just take what he's doing and go right at his strength and then mock it. Mockery is one of the most effective forms of communications that there is. It just is. And people will remember that. Because I'm a male, so I can't cackle. I'm sorry. Only females can cackle.
Yes, you can. I beg to differ. I think you're a very good cackler, James.
Okay.
But I don't know. Won't that sort of be against when they go low, we go high idea of Michelle Obama?
That's great. Michelle Obama's great. I say when they go low, we go lower. Hell with high.
What do you think? What do you think is one of some of the weaknesses, or yeah, that the Republicans will be exploiting?
What we should exploit, or what they are going to try to exploit?
What are Kamala Harris's weaknesses that the Republicans will try to exploit?
Well, they will say the border, the border, the border. But I've heard her, and she's a pretty good answer, right? And sometimes in politics, you don't have the perfect answer. You're never going to win the issue totally, but there are ways that you can mitigate it or lose by less. This may be one, and she can always segue into the crimes. But border crossings are down. By the way, they negotiated an agreement that was endorsed by all of the Border Patrol agents, all the people on the border, and Donald Trump killed it. So this is a little paradoxical that he's now attacking me when we had come up, and our solution right now is, well, I think border crossings are down significantly. So we have a pretty good answer on that. And we could go right to the crime issue, which is a good issue for us.
In his new piece for The Atlantic, David Frum writes that the Trump team will attempt to define Harris by casting her as a threat to sexual decency and racial order.
He's a bright guy. I mean, I think that's going to be mild compared to what they're going to try to do. But
meaning what?
Well, I mean, so look, J.D. Vance, they bring his wife is like a clerk for 2 Supreme Court. She's Indian. And they started attacking J.D. Vance's wife, the Stu Peters and Nick Fuentes and all of the kind of Trump people out there. I mean, they built a house of racism, and now it's devouring them. And Trump is going to be driving himself crazy now because he should have picked somebody else, because it looked like it made sense then, but it doesn't make sense now. And they're a little bit off, but of course they go. I was just seeing John Kennedy's the Louisiana Republican senator. Calls him the most dangerous person in the history of the planet. You can't even. It's impossible to think of anybody that is more hideous and insidious than Vice President Harris. And he's not going to do anything. You're not going to stop that. it's going to have every kind of a misogynistic, racist wink and, you know, dog whistle that you can think of. Well, no, that's
Calling
coming.
her the DEI candidate, for example.
I say, I say diverse, educated, and intelligent. I that's so 2021. All
I
right.
want to read this Trump tweet from Truth Social, James, and get your reaction. Also, respects to our potentially new Democrat challenger, laughing Kamala Harris. She did poorly in the Democratic nominating process, starting out at number 2 and ending up defeated and dropping out even before getting to Iowa. But that doesn't mean she's not a quote unquote highly talented politician. Just ask her mentor, the great Willie Brown of San Francisco. I've seen things like this on social media. Megyn Kelly defended talking about Kamala Harris and this trope of sleeping her way to the top. What is that about?
Well, first of all, I know Willie. I talked to him last year. I tried to help somebody in a thing, and are you sure a lot of people around America know Willie Brown? And going in the, go to the shopping mall, or, go through there and say, hey, do you know Willie Brown? So it's a lot of, uh, there's a lot going on there. Okay. We have a pretty good idea of what some of it is. And I don't think that I think that stuff is coming. I think it's inevitable. And I think the best thing to do is just brush all that off. And
You do? Because, I think about the Swift Boat campaign against John Kerry that really was so ultimately damaging to him, James. And I wonder, can you really brush this stuff off? Or, I mean, these
well, I think you got,
insinuations and suggestions, they're so misogynistic and gross.
well, you got to pick and choose because they're going to throw so much stuff at you. You're going to have to brush some of it off because you're not going to have the time. It's going to be highly undisciplined. I don't think this, I would worry much more about the question, well, when did you know this? What did you see? Then I would worry about this. This nonsense is always been with us. There's no, and they'll try, they're getting started because they've been hit. Me honest with you, and they're mad. And they're starting to throw some haymakers, but they'll get back and they'll say, all right, now settle down. Here's where we're going. And they're gonna hit us pretty hard. But we got comebacks. It's kind of remarkable for Trump to talk about anybody sleeping with anybody when he was sleeping with somebody and his wife was having a baby, which we already know. I mean, we don't. I don't think we really want to have a campaign about who's sleeping with who. I wouldn't think that would. I don't think that Donald Trump would do very well in that little.
Do you think that Kamala Harris will be able to energize young people, people of color who have kind of moved, some of whom have moved away from Joe Biden, and suburban women, which are three important and powerful constituencies?
Well, that was horrible. Our numbers among under 30 and our numbers among blacks were not bad. They were horrific. And I'm going to be looking. You got to give this thing like 10 days to germinate. But I think it will help a lot because I think what's at work here is they would just want to change. We just want something different. And they weren't advocating for a particular policy change. It wasn't about anything like that. It was just, well, like what we got. And then something different came along and you could tell the mood changed. You just, how do I know? I could just feel it. It just changed like, oh, thank God. And you could see it in a lot of different places. Just everybody was extraordinarily happy that we wouldn't have to have this choice. And, I think she can keep riding that. I mean, I think that's a real, everything she should do should be project energy, protect youth, and something different. And I think if people see that, we can get a good bit of them back. Now, whether we can get them back to the 2020 coalition, I don't know. I think Trump cannot be the stupidest people in the world said he's a changed man. Oh my God. How many times I have to listen to that nonsense? But we can count on him to help with so-called suburban women. Uh, I we got real work to do. But this is a important first step, and I'm mostly looking at the early polling on under 30 in black and particularly black males.
You have said that if you could give Vice President Harris a piece of advice, is that, quote, all the great politicians never looked like they were trying too hard.
Right. That's correct. If you think of, first of all, they're all highly competitive people. I mean, no one gets in politics at this level unless they're really, really competitive. And if you think of Reagan, or you think of Bill Clinton, Obama, they always were trying really hard, but you never saw them sweat. And then think of like Bobby Jindal. All he did was sweat. All right. He just tried. Yeah. All right. So the idea, sometimes you can get excited. You get somewhere and you get excited, and just always try hard. But like Willie Mays looked better missing a fly ball than some people look catching a fly ball because there was so much grace and motion and movement, and I can't explain what it is, but sometimes the vice president has a tendency to try too hard.
And you can see almost the wheels turning in her head.
Right. And I would just, if I was in her head, I'd say, wait, reverse the wheels. All right. Let's take it down the third and then go. I think that's just something that people can improve on. I don't know if they can change, but they can improve on it because as you say, you never ever want them to see you sweat or try, struggle.
You also want to be authentic. And I remember when my sister was running for lieutenant governor with Mark Warner in Virginia, James, and then she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and sadly had to drop out of the race and later passed away. But I remember she said to me, when you run for office, you have to be willing to lose. In other words, you have to be your authentic self and you have to, have some kind of North Star. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do. But sometimes, politics, you have examples. With two inauthentic people run against each other, one of them's going to win. I don't think the lesson is to be inauthentic. All right. But I think what your sister was trying to say is over time in politics, people will see you and they got to see the same thing. Because if they don't, they'll become distrustful. But why do people, bad example, but people go to McDonald's because they're going to get the same thing. They don't go there for something different. But in politics, I worked for a guy one time who lied so much and he would actually lie when the truth would serve him better. And I said, well, why? He said, because if I told the truth, I'd get confused. So if you if you don't lie, you don't have to worry. You're not going to get confused. If you lie, sometimes you're trying to think, God damn, was I? Well, where was I then? Was I? But she was right that people will see your core at a point, and what they generally want to see is somebody that's consistent and knows why they're here and knows why they're doing what they're doing. I mean, and you know this is why are you running for president? And the great moment.
Roger Mudd, Teddy Kennedy interview.
Right. And everybody should be able to answer that question pretty comfortably, no matter what you're running for.
I want to ask you before we go about the vice presidential choice. You have said that if her team really wants someone to go after Trump and Vance, who's 3 times better than all of the rest of them put together, they should pick Mitch Landrieu, your fellow Louisiana man. I haven't heard Mitch's name in the mix very much.
Well, I don't know, but I didn't tell me anything. And my point is, which if you want to really project youth and kind of broad appeal, I'd probably do my friend Andy Bashir. If you wanted to protect can do, get her done, key swing state, my dear friend Josh Shapiro, all right, would be, but there are other people. But it depends on what you want. But if you, the reason I was saying was Mitch, he's the best communicator, but not even close. And if you know all these Republican attacks that you're talking about, he can take them all better than anybody. Now that it depends on what strategically, what are you looking for? Are you looking for an image, a swing state? You can do critical state, somebody that's got your flanks and your back covered. That brings you to another subject. My only hope is that it's somebody, relatively young. I I think that generational change and some freshness is the key element here.
And it would be hard to have two women on the ticket. Do you think that a woman finally in 2024 would be able to be elected president of the United States? I'm always shocked, James, at how much sexism and misogyny, not to mention racism, is still out there in this country. I think sometimes we get the wrong impression if we live in certain bubbles or have certain friends. But how worried are you about those things?
Well, the fact is, a woman won the popular vote by more than just a teeny bit for president. And, it's a bad distribution, electoral college, that happens. We elected a female vice president. Had seemed to drag anybody down. And, the country is moving. It's changing. I mean, of course, there are a lot of people who don't want it to change. But none of those people were going to vote for you anyway. I don't, and she probably won't. But if she took Governor Whitmer, who's another can do, get out of my way, I'm going to fix the damn street, I would be excited about it. But, misogyny, racial letters, that's the periodontal disease of America. You're not going to get rid of it. You just got to live with it. Okay. There's nothing, it's always going to be there.
And what about Pete Buttigieg? I think Pete is so impressive. I love that he goes on Fox News and, argues with them. I think he's one of the most eloquent politicians there is today. Talk about a great communicator, and yet he's gay. Would that fly with the electorate at large?
I don't know. I mean, I just don't know. I don't just to be determined. But I do think the country's shown that it vote for women pretty easily. People say, well, Shapiro's Jewish. Well, I don't think Joe Lieberman cost Al Gore 1,500 votes in 2000. I mean, I just, maybe I reflect my own thing. I don't really care. It's not that making a difference to me. But I think that's more and more where the country is going. They're much less identity conscious than we were growing up.
You said in an Axios article, the most thunderous sound in politics is the sound of a turning page. I love that quote.
Yes, ma'am. I said it and I believe it.
That, along with your description of a picture of a thoroughly modern family of Kamala Harris and her family, do you think those things will catapult her, or do you think that it will remain a super tight race until November?
I early in my career, Peter Hart, and and the kind of sage of polling, said, I never predict elections. I just try to affect elections. And I don't think I'm any better at predicting than you see these stock market guys buy some, sell others. They don't know either. But I think if Harris makes this about kind of change and freshness and something different, and doesn't get bogged down into their kind of attacks and that kind of stuff, I think she can win. I really do. I sense real energy out there. I know some of it will get dissipated, but at the end of the day, do you want hope or do you want to go back? And I think she can. She's. I'm getting convinced that she can shape that issue. This is about pushing forward or going back. It's that simple. He wants to take you back to yesterday. I want to push you into tomorrow. I think it sounded simple. Nobody's going, no genius algorithms will come up with that. But you know what? It ain't a bad message.
James, thanks so much. It's great to talk to you.